Today in the show, I wanted to talk about Spider-Man Homecoming. It's been a few months, so I figured, hey, let's look at it and let's be completely unobjective. We're over the hype of how good the movie seemed when it first came out. Is it as good as everyone thought it was? The answer is yes, and in this video, I'm gonna tell you for why. So to give you a bit of a backstory of me and Spider-Man, as you know, I've been reading comics for the majority of my life, and it's weird, everyone thinks that Spider-Man's sort of like a go-to character for people. When I first got into comics, I read a few Spider-Man comics, and the only thing I could think, even from like the age of 2 or 3, when I was like reading comics, was that I didn't really like this guy who was Spider-Man. Then the Ultimate Universe came about, and I really liked Miles Morales, but Peter Parker, I was never really into. I more liked the people around him, the people that were like associated with him. Like, I love Madame Web. I really like Jessica Drew. Matty Franklin was kind of like my go-to character in the Spider family. So when it came to Spider-Man Homecoming, I feel like I wasn't as excited as other people, but at the same time, I was really excited to see the Marvel Cinematic Universe's take on Spider-Man. And then he was in Civil War, and I really enjoyed him in Civil War. I stand by my point that from a narrative perspective, that might not have been the best thing, and I'll get into that in a second, but I really enjoyed how he was portrayed in Civil War, so I got really excited for Homecoming after that. I don't watch trailers, I avoided the trailers like the plague, and so when Homecoming did come out, I didn't see it for weeks, and I went to a matinee screening because I wanted there to only be me and a few other people in the cinema, and that's exactly what I got, and I loved it, and I went back that same day and watched it again. I love this movie, and I'm gonna tell you for why. First of all, I love how Marvel weren't assholes about the fact that Peter is a teenage boy. Like, I feel like as a person that's probably closer to being a teenager than the average movie reviewer, I really enjoyed the portrayal of being a teenager in this day and age. It wasn't exactly a core focus of this movie, but I like the fact that they sort of touched on the idea of everyone's always connected. School doesn't just end at school anymore. Bullying doesn't just end at school. So it's kind of weird when you have a character like Peter that does just disappear. Normally you can just get in touch with someone and they're there, but like Peter just has this tendency to just disappear, and I like that it was touched on. I kind of wish they went in a bit deeper with it, but I like that it was touched on. The portrayal of Peter and Spider-Man were both brilliant. I like how spindly Spider-Man looked. He wasn't like too ripped, he wasn't like too thin. He looked like a spindly teenage boy that has become a superhero, and I really enjoyed that, and I really like the costume. Like, I'm not exactly a person that's particularly into Spider-Man costumes, because I kind of feel like, you know, at the end of the day, it's a Spider-Man costume. You kind of know what you're going to get for the most part. It's got the same silhouette every time. But for this one, because there was like a mix of different textiles and textures and a mix of different fabrics, and you could tell there was a lot of different techniques put into making it. So I really enjoyed it for that reason. And I liked how from this age, Peter is already dealing with the fact that, you know, he can't be Spider-Man and have a stable romance life. Like, that's something that Peter Parker has always struggled with in the comics, and I like that that's already happening from being a teenager. I think that's a question that's not really often answered in regards to Spider-Man. Like, you know, he became Spider-Man as a teenager. How did he handle his romantic life back then? Because people don't really tend to think of teenage romance as a serious thing. But obviously when you are a teenager and you're in that position, it is a serious thing for you. It's your first romance. It's like a big deal for you in that moment. And so I liked seeing that perspective. Although something I will commend Marvel for that I really liked was that it wasn't MJ and Peter in a relationship this time. It was that girl, Liz. And I like this portrayal of MJ in this movie. I know she might not be Mary Jane. She could be Mary Jane. But regardless, I really liked this character. And if she does go on to be the cinematic universe's equivalent of Mary Jane, I will be more than happy with that. Because Mary Jane in the comics, there's two extremes of her. Either she is a Mary Jane, or she's an asshole. There is no in-between with her. Whereas this one, she was the in-between, and I liked that. So I spent a long time gushing over this movie. Now to get onto some things that I didn't particularly like, starting with Peter being in Civil War, which I know is more of a criticism of the cinematic universe as a whole, but it does lead into Homecoming. I do not think that Peter should have been in Civil War because it does not make sense for that universe. Let me tell you for why. So in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you have all the movies and you also have the TV shows and the Netflix shows, which I understand are being made by ABC Studios and not Marvel Studios, which is why a lot of the TV characters cannot appear in the cinematic universe, even though I kind of feel that they should, but I understand it's a whole business thing. Ignoring the business issues, which I understand are there, and just focusing on a narrative perspective, it would have made more sense for Jessica Jones to have appeared in Civil War because everyone knew about her at the end of Jessica Jones. Like, the fact that she had these powers were public. So it would have made more sense for Tony Stark to have gone to her and like appeared at the bar that she frequents, outdrink her, and then drag her along to Civil War, and she just like takes part because she wants to go the fuck home. So from a narrative perspective, that didn't make sense to me, and it sort of made me feel uncomfortable, but I still went into Homecoming being very, very excited. And then my issue with Homecoming is that in the movie, Peter, not once in the movie, just not once, has to take responsibility for his actions. An example of this is his actions caused that shop to be blown up at the beginning of the movie, and he goes in there and that guy is alive, the dog is alive, everything's fine. Then you have that part with his team in that contest, and Peter's locked in that warehouse overnight and he can't get out, but his team go and do the contest and win without him anyway. Again, he doesn't need to take responsibility for not being there, for not prioritizing, okay, I'm here to do a school thing, I really just can't be Spider-Man right now. I'm not saying that would have been the right thing to do, but there does need to be responsibility taken for having a bias towards one of his two lifestyles. And finally, there's my issue with the boat. The boat splits in two, Iron Man comes along, repairs the boat, and everything's fine. Peter does get his suit taken away from him by Tony Stark, but then at the end of the movie, after he's congratulated for Tony for his actions, he leaves Tony. Tony's offered him a brand new suit. He leaves Tony with the intention of using his own suit from that point forwards. He's just saved the day with his own suit, so he doesn't want the Spider-Man suit anymore by that point. And then at the end of the movie, he gets his Spider-Man suit back and it's no big deal. Again, he doesn't have to take any responsibility for his actions. And I understand it's a family movie and it's probably done for young teenage boys in particular to relate to, because who wants to take responsibility for their actions in life anyway? No one. So in that sense, the way it was written was good as a fantasy perspective, but from a narrative and character development perspective, I honestly didn't really appreciate it. Does this issue make it one of my least favorite movies from Marvel? No, absolutely not. This is like my third favorite live action Marvel adaptation. Number 1 is Jessica Jones, and number 2 is Captain America Winter Soldier. So I really liked this movie. Like, it's right up there for me. And I know some of you are gonna say, but Faust, don't you usually like esoteric messages and something deep and an overall deep message that people can learn from stuff? A lot of the time I do. I really do need that. But sometimes lowbrow entertainment's okay. And this is one of the times where I can appreciate this kind of lowbrow entertainment, because they knew what they were making, they knew what it was, and they didn't try and make it seem like something more than it was. So because of that, I really did appreciate it, and I really enjoy this movie. So as the summer ends, if you haven't seen Spider-Man Homecoming yet, definitely go and see it. If it's in your cinema still, please give it the time. I saw it 5 times, and I can't wait for it to be out on Blu-ray because I want all the director's commentary in and around my body. It's super effective! Okay guys, that is it for today. So have you seen Spider-Man Homecoming yet? Please leave it in the comments down below. Also don't forget to thumbs up, subscribe to all of my social links, and I will see you next time. But seriously, let me know what you thought of Spider-Man Homecoming, because I want some good Spider-Man Homecoming discussion and tasty Spider-Man memes.